this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. I'm quite away from the camera so the sound might be a bit faint, but if I get the camera too close you won't be able to see what I'm doing. Like quite a few people asked about getting a plant ready for a show. Well, each plant has to be looked at individually, so there is no one thing to do. But first thing I've done is taken off all the dead sheaths from around the base of the bulbs. It just tidies it up a bit. I've got my scissors in some alcohol, which now need to be allowed to evaporate, because that's the bit that does the cleaning. There is a possibility with the plants I'm getting ready of possibly trimming a leaf off here and there, or maybe cutting into a leaf, and as a consequence obviously I want my scissors sterile to start with and sterilised between each plant so we don't pass anything on. And the first thing I actually want to do is there's a leaf very close to the you probably can't see it, but it's very close to the flower spike. It's on an old bulb and it's got some quite bad markings on it, so I want to take that one off because it will distract from the spike. Yeah, it's not a nice looking leaf. It's on an old bulb, serving no purpose with a pot full of leaves like that. There's another one there I don't like the look of. That one's quite bad, so that one can come off. There's a few brown tips here and there. There's a trick you can do with leaves that have got brown tips, is trim them in such a way that they still look a bit like a leaf. I mean, a judge would spot it a mile off, but these aren't going in for judging. It just makes the leaf look a little bit more leaf-like. There's another leaf there I'm not too keen on, so you can come off. And there's another one here that's got a brown tip to it, so we'll have that one off. Just cut it in a V shape, similar to what the leaf would look like before you cut it. It just disguises it a little bit. A lot of people wouldn't notice. I'll leave that one. The problem I've got with this is that it is a naturally pendant spike, and as such the flowers are all jumbled up with these leaves, and these leaves go with the growth that produce the spike, so I don't really want to take those off. Another dead sheath there, we'll have that off while I'm there. You always miss one. So what I'm going to try and do with this one is stake the spike and raise it up above the leaves. First of all, is it bendy? Yes, it is. And I've got to look at, if you alter a spike after it's set its blooms, you can end up with blooms that are upside down. But that one's not bad. That one and that one are up the right way. That one's facing the wrong way. There's nothing I can do about that one. And that one's slightly on its side. But this isn't going in for showing. It's merely going into our display. So all I want people to be able to do is see the blooms, really. So I'm just going to put a stake down in there. So I'm holding the spike roughly where I want it, and then all I've got to do hopefully is just tie it at that point, and that just raises the spike up above the leaves slightly. There's not much more I can do with that. Trim the ends off so that they're not too visible. You notice I've tied that above the first bloom. The reason for that is that the tie won't slide down the spike when I'm not looking. Right, so that's got the spike sorted out roughly where I want it. I really could do without some of these leaves, but I'm not taking them off. They're at the growing point of the plant, so that's all it is. And then it's just a matter of, I've got some RO water here. Whoops. I use that because obviously it's got no calcium in it and won't leave any deposits on the plant. And then it's just a matter of gently wiping the leaves off, just to make sure they're clean. If this was going into the show, any form of leaf shine in any shape will mark the plant down. Judges really do not like artificially shined up leaves. You know, the use of oils and things like that. They just really don't like it. So clean leaves is what they like. You know, dust, things like that. And while I'm doing this, it gives me a chance to have a good look over and make sure I've got no bugs. So that's that one done. I've got quite a lot to do. I'm not filming all of them, but that's just a general idea. And as I said, I'm not being too fussy because it's not actually going on the competition tables. It's just going in the display for people to look at. I'll do a couple more. Okay, I'm going to have a play with this Cattleya, and depending on the result, depends on whether I whether I actually put it on the competition table or not. Just depends whether I can get it in a position. Now I'm in a dodgy position now. I've got to take all my plants to somebody else's house, and they'll be taking them to the show tomorrow. I won't be there. Now the competition rules at our place are that all plants must be in a black pot. Well, I haven't got the black pots. Normally I'm there and there's a guy has like 3 or 4 sackfuls of every possible size black pot you can imagine, and you just help yourself and then hand them back at the end of the show. Because I'm not there, I'm going to have to ask very nicely if somebody else will do that for me and set the plant up on the table. If they're not happy to do that, then this will just go in the display. But it's not going in the competition table unless I can do something with these 2 blooms, because at the moment that looks silly. That is not a show plant. As you can see, the 2 blooming spikes are what, 14, 15, 16 inches apart, and I need to do that sort of thing with them to make it more of a show plant, which means tying those 2 bulbs through the centre of the plant and then doing my best to hide the tie. And if it doesn't work, then I won't worry too much. There's a dead leaf on an old pseudo bulb that's yellow, so that can come off. There's another leaf that is just starting to yellow, but it's on an old bulb and it's a Cattleya. And as far as I'm concerned, part of the marks on the plant are the progression of the plant. How well is it growing on from how it used to be? You know, is this a good example of that plant? And this plant was obviously grown from a seedling. You can see the little seedling bulbs. So that's not a problem. That is actually almost a bonus, is the fact that it shows that this plant has grown on, split several times and has multiple leads. So a judge would think, ah, that seems to be growing quite well. And then they consider, is it a good example of that particular plant and variety? And in other words, how well, a lot of them have got like a stockpile in their mind of practically every plant you can think of, and in their mind they're thinking, oh, I remember seeing one of those 3 or 4 years ago and it had 7 flower spikes on and it was absolutely stunning. Well, if there's a judge there with that picture in their mind, they're going to look at that and say, oh, that's not very good, is it? It's harsh, but you know, it's judging. And it's not just based on the plants that are there, it's based on a historical view of possibly every plant they've ever seen. And we have got some flipping good judges in our society. They don't muck about. They can be quite harsh, fair but harsh. So I'm going to see if I can pull these. I don't even know if this raffia is even going to be strong enough. These bulbs are really strapping, sturdy things. But if I can pull them in closer together and hide the tie in amongst the other leaves of the plant so it doesn't show too much, then it might be worth it. It might not work. But there's only one way to find out, isn't there? Let's try it. I could try staking each individual bulb, but on this particular plant there's not much to get a stake into. You know, it's in a holy clay pot with chunky bark. The stake's just going to wobble around, it's just not going to work very well. Now if I pull on that, I need to pull against the other one, don't I? Let's see. In fact, I think I might need to go round twice. This raffia is not strong. And then I get to pull it in as tight as I can. I'm not going to break the bulbs or anything, you know, but I need to just be able to get that. That's about as tight as I can go. They're not going to like that tie, that's for sure. But then it's not them doing it, and like I said, I've only got so much time to play with this, so playing is all I'm doing. And this is going in the competition table, not to try and win anything, but to keep the numbers on the competition table up. I remember one show we did quite a while ago now, one of the early ones, and several of the categories on the table had no plants bought in, and they had to sort of rearrange the tables and shut those categories down, because you know, you can't have a thing that's open to the public and have big empty spaces on the table. That's not on. I think that's going to work. Yeah. Right. Next thing is, how clean can I get these leaves? Because this one has actually been sprayed with a chemical, and it might not give up the marks very easily. So I'll have a chat with the Vice Chairman when my plants get to his house and see what he thinks. He'll say just put it in. I know what he's like. He just likes the tables full. But yeah, not too bad. Now this is the one I was just talking about. Before I split this plant into two, it had 2 flower spikes like that, and as I said, because the leaves were a bit mucky, it got demoted to second. Now, I don't know whether you're going to be able to see this, but the marks on these leaves, I believe, are chemical damage, and I doubt scrubbing them is going to clean it off. But this isn't going in the show, this is only going in the display. So I think the expression is, I'm not that fussed. But I'm going to try wiping them off, and oh, fragrance on this is absolutely gorgeous. Mind you, it's just come out of the sunshine in the grow room, so all I'm interested in this is getting dust off on the grounds that, you know, it is going to go in a public display, and it would be better if the leaves just at least look clean, look like somebody actually looks after it now and again when they remember, when they think about it. I was just thinking back to I think it was Alberto visited Rachel in Ireland and spent ages actually cleaning off all the leaves on her plants. I invited him to come and do mine, but yeah, so that's all that's going to get. I'm not staking, I'm not doing anything flash, I'm not doing anything with that. That's just going to go in the display, and somebody should be with that display most of the time. We can get people to stick their nose in that, you know. Oh, have a smell of that one, that one's fragrant. And it really is too. So that's that one done. Now my Oncidium Twinkle, as twinkles go, is not in bad nick. Just looking at the leaves, there's some marks on that leaf. That's a very old pseudobulb, so that leaf can just come off. Then it's not a problem, is it? Most of the other leaves, I can see one other old leaf with some spots on, and most of the other leaves are green with no markings on them. And for Oncidiums, that's unusual. So as a plant, it's not a bad plant. But as a blooming display, if it's going to go on the competition tables, I'm going to have to do some work. I've got a very large spike here. Now these blooms are so tiny that whether they're upright or not makes no difference. But if I'm going to put this in the show, that spike needs to be upright so that it's got like a centre piece. So I'll have to get that up there somewhere, somehow. And then you've either got to have your blooms facing the judges, that's what they like, or a rounded display where you've got blooms quite evenly spaced. And this one lends itself to do that. I've got one here, another quite long one here, and then I've got another little one round the, actually I've got another 2 round the back. So I think we'll do that as a rounded display. And this time, hang on, I forgot to re-sterilise my scissors, just give them a dip and a shake. If I'm taking a couple of leaves off, better safe than sorry. So that leaf's got some spots on it. That's all. I mean, as Oncidiums go, that's not a big deal. But it's an old leaf, and it's not essential for the plant. And then the other one is that one there, which is right down on that little bulb in the middle of the plant. And then there's one leaf starting to yellow on an old pseudobulb. That's natural, so I'm going to leave that one. Or am I? No, I'm not actually. I'm going to take it off, simply because I think that's where the flower spike's going to end up. So so I will take that off. That underneath that leaf was actually a flower spike that had already been trimmed. Next thing to do, old flower spikes. Yes, they're natural, but they can be trimmed off. Just tidies the plant a little bit. That's probably all that actually needs. I don't know whether these will get top dressed, but again, that's not up to me, that's up to whatever nice volunteer helps me out by doing these. Now this would be ideal if I had green stakes, but the only green stakes I've got are massive, and this is a delicate little plant. They would look silly, so I'd rather use my little non-green ones, and if they knock a couple of points off just for the stakes, well, so be it. I'm sort of at that. Actually, on this one, this is not going to be that easy to clean the leaves off, and it'll be even more difficult once the actual stakes are in place, because it'll be easy to knock them and displace the blooms. So I'm going to clean the leaves off before I put the stakes on. Most of those marks have come off. They've come off good enough for me anyway. So that's the leaves done. Now we've got to look at trying to stake these spikes. That's the biggest one. That's the one I want upright in the middle. Now I've still got to decide where the front of the plant is. Actually, it doesn't matter that much on this one because it's going to be displayed as an even display. So I'm just going to try and get a stake down through there and then tie this spike near the base. So I've got one upright spike in the middle. That's like the, what's almost like the showpiece, I suppose you could call that. Yeah, that'll do. Let's get that done. I always tie one thing at a time, and sometimes I come back to it and actually move it once I've, as I progress around the plant. But initially, I'm quite happy with this one. To tie this one in the centre, and I think that's where it will stay. See, I could use this one as a centrepiece, that's a nice tall one, but then I'd have a gap between those two blooms, and if I'm going for the circular type display, I need that one where it is. And it won't get staked, it's arching nicely. This is, I won't be staking all of these, it's just a couple, but I do want this one as a sort of centrepiece. So that's that one done. Now all I've got to do with the others is try and make sure that they're nicely balanced. Is that tie going to stay there? Just about, I think. Alright, so that's that one done. This one could do with lifting a little, but is it worth a stake? Bearing in mind the stake will look ugly. I think that one's okay. I think that one's okay. That one's okay. It's this one that's my problem one. I think that one can stay where he is. It's just this one. It's too low. It needs to come up. And then this one, which is already standing upright, could do with just pulling out there, but I don't think I'm going to be able to achieve that without... Alright, we'll have two going up the middle then. Yeah, this is the only one. It droops a little bit. But quite honestly, I think if I try and put any more stakes on that plant, it's going to look like a pot full of stakes with a few leaves and some yellow. So I think that's it. I think that's all I'm going to do for that. Anyway, that's that little one. Yeah, that'll do. Right, so this one is only going into the looking at display. I don't have to be that fussy with this one. It's the flowers that people are going to look at. And I don't think this plant's ever been sprayed, so anything that's on these leaves, we're on it. Well, actually that's not true. all the canes that are actually in bloom at the moment are ones I've grown, but this one is not allowed in the competition because I haven't owned it for 12 months, and I'm still relatively confident that some of the members cheat. I caught one out once and actually told the chairman because it annoyed me. And it annoyed me because I'd gone to a local garden centre and they had some absolutely gorgeous berryodas in full bloom, and they were all the same. You know, you had a job to tell the difference between any of the plants. You know, they'd been grown in the same place, in the same manner, had virtually the same number of canes on them, and were all in full bloom. And I couldn't resist, I had to have one. I mean, I don't possess the berryoda anymore, that's been sold on to others since then. It's not a flower that I'm that keen on, but it has got a lovely fragrance, and providing you treat them right in the winter, they should bloom quite well. Being a hybrid, they've got that extra little bit in them. But anyway, I took my plant home. They were all in the same sort of pots, yeah. And then lo and behold, at the next Orchid Society meeting, somebody put exactly that plant on the competition table. And well, I had a chat about it because I just didn't think it was fair. And the person I chatted to, the chairman, when I reminded him about the rules, he scratched his head and he said, "Do you know what? I went and bought one of those as well. And you're right. That's come from that garden centre, hasn't it?" I said, "Yes, it has. I could stake my life on it." And the person had a word from the chairman on the rules. And now it could remotely be possible that that person had never read that part of our little manual about the rules and didn't know. But it's not like they were a brand new member. It certainly wasn't the first plant they'd put on the tables. And of course that made me suspicious of every plant that person ever put in again. You know, the rules are there. It's not fair to take what could have been a person's only award because it's their best plant and it's their best blooming ever. They've put it into the competition with great pride, and somebody steals the first away from them with a store-bought plant that they haven't grown themselves. It's just not fair. Anyway, that's all I'm going to do to that, just a quick clean off of a few of the older leaves, and that just sort of speaks for itself. If this was going to be a show plant, I would have to make sure that every single one of these was evenly spaced, yeah, just to make that top show extra special. But as it's only going in the looking at display, that'll do nicely. Okay, that's what I'm taking then. Now comes the hard part, trying to pack those all carefully in a box that I can carry without bashing them around too much, and then this afternoon they can go in the car. Now I know I said I wasn't going to post a video, but this one, talking about these plants while I was dealing with them, didn't take up any extra time, apart from this little bit on the end. If you see what I mean. So quite a lot of people asked about getting plants ready for a show, and I may not have covered absolutely everything. I mean, I haven't done, you know, making sure they're in black pots, make sure those pots are clean, and to be absolutely pedantic, you should top dress those pots with some small bark or something so that all the plants look the same. That's the idea in a display. But as I said, there's only one of these, two of these I think that are actually going to go on the show table. The little Oncidium Twinkle and the Orange Cattleya. I'll put those on the table. The others are just going in the display. But the hard part is the transport, getting them packed up nicely, getting them in the car, you know, getting them to somebody else's house. Then that person's then got to pack them up with all their own plants and anybody else. Because there's 3 or 4 people at our society that are quite happy to drive around to people's houses and pick up their plants to take to the show. Most of the people that put plants on the competition table arrive early and set them up themselves because they want to do it themselves. It's their own plant going into the competition element, and they want to do it all themselves. I'm trusting somebody else to do my couple, and we'll see how we go. But yeah, I know I said I wasn't going to film anything, but this is cost me no extra time, so I'll get this one posted later today. Well, I can actually finish this video off properly. Firstly, I forgot, because that lives out in the garden, why I got this. and I managed to find a black pot that is a little too big, but the next one down this cattleya pot won't fit into. So, and the fact that the pot's a little large, given what I'm going to do, may even be a bonus. Now this pot sinks in far too low. Yeah, it'd be down out of sight. So I'm going to put a rock in the bottom. Just check where the edge of the pot comes to now. Yeah, that'll be fine. And then to stop that rock rolling around in the bottom of the pot and probably moving around to such an extent that it might dislodge the pot, I'm just going to put some newspaper around the rock, just to hold it in place basically. That's all it's doing. And now it is in the bottom of the pot and it can't move. And that will help stabilise what is a very, very light plastic pot. And then hopefully that will sit in there. Yes, it will. And again, to stop the pot rocking around, I'm just going to put some newspaper in round the edge. And will stop the pot moving away from the centre of the display pot. That's the idea anyway. Yep, that's nice and firm, reasonably central. Now I'm going to have to do a new label for this because it's we're not supposed to leave labels in the plants that have actually got anything other than the plant name on them, and that's actually got the manufacturer's tag. I'm not going to get rid of that tag because that's a memory for me. I got this plant from Chantel's Orchids before she left for Australia, so I want to keep the tag, but I'll do a new one with just the plant name on. Now I haven't, since this moss was planted, I've never tried to get any out, so I don't know whether it's attached to the pot and how easy it is going to be to get it out. The idea is to top dress the top of the pot with the moss, which I think might look quite nice. As I say, I've never done this before. I'll try and make sure the green parts of the moss are the bits that are on the top. Oh, cat just come in. Noisy cat. So this moss, once the plant comes back tomorrow evening, can just be lifted off and put straight back in the tray. And I think it looks like it might set the plant off quite nicely. Oops, browned it. It's a lump of wood. I'm going to try and get some in between the rhizomes as well to make it look like it's growing, even though it isn't. The idea anyway. And there's a bonus here, because if I've missed a scale or anything around the base of the rhizomes, you can't see them now. And they're also buried. Now obviously I've got to try and cover the rim of the pot and make sure that doesn't show. So in some places, oh, got a tree growing in there. In some places the moss will have to go quite high. Tuck all the ends in, make it look neat and tidy, or as neat and tidy as it can be. Yeah, I'd just completely forgotten that I'd got some live moss, and the reason for getting this live moss was to top dress the plants. Apart from the fact I just like moss anyway. So I'll find some more nice green bits. And then, having now used it, I can find out how easily it readapts itself to the tray when it comes back and gets poked back in, because that's all that will happen. A bit more green around that bit. But do you know what? There's ice in the bottom of this tray. Actual ice. That's how cold it was last night. Doesn't hurt the moss. You know, I mean, it lives outdoors. That's where it comes from. From the wilds. I was just thinking now, what have I just done? If I've put moss on the top of the pot that's got ice on the base of it, I've just added ice, haven't I? Just add ice. Just don't. But this is in the warm now, that ice. It's going to melt very fast. Yeah, I think that looks a little bit better than letting somebody else do it and just stick it in a black pot. It'll also stop them top dressing my pot with something like small bark, which will then go down inside my holy clay pot where I've got large chunky bark, and I don't want small bark in there. I wanted small bark in there, that's what I'd have put in there. Yeah, sets the plant off quite nicely. Right, that's that one done. Let's get that one out of the way. And I managed to find a smaller one to put the Oncidium in. I've got a horrible feeling there. This one's got some gravel in the bottom just to help stabilise the pot, and hopefully the pot will sit in there at a reasonable height. Yeah, actually the pot is a bit deep inside its outside pot, but I haven't got a lot of room for moss on this one, so that will actually work as a bonus, and I don't have to worry quite so much about getting the brown bits off the bottom, because all I've got to do on this one, I can't get this one all in between the rhizomes, they're too tightly packed, so all I've got to do is just get a little ring of green moss around the top of the pot, just to make it look pretty. Well, I didn't think I'd be breaking the moss out of lumps of ice, I must admit, but it was quite cold last night. Dead leaf, on that in there, because that doesn't look pretty. My tray of moss doesn't look quite so pretty now, but as I said, once I poke all this back in the tray, it'll re-establish itself. I mean, it was all bits and pieces when it was poked in the tray, and it's grown a good cover onto the top of the tray since then. So I've got a nice tray full, and it will soon re-establish itself. Just a little bit more in there. There we go, and that saves them chucking a load of stuff in my pots that I don't want. Yeah, quite pleased with that. That sets the plants off quite nicely. So I completely forgot I'd got that moss. I'll tidy that tray up when I poke the moss back in tomorrow evening, or probably Sunday morning now. By the time we get back from the show tomorrow evening, first of all it will be food time, and then it will probably be flake out in the chair time, so there won't be much done apart from just, I'll probably just throw the box full of plants in the grow room and shut the door and sort them all out Sunday morning. Okay, I think that has done the job quite nicely. Just sets the plants off, gives that nice green natural look, and certainly with the Cattleya, yeah, happy with that. So that's an idea, not the only idea for dressing pots, not from a long point. What a lot of people do is just put some newspaper down the side of the dressing pot, if it's not already growing in a black pot, obviously, and then they just top dress it with like seedling bark or something that's nice and uniform, and it just sets the top of the pot off nicely. But I think that moss looks quite nice, looks quite natural. Right, that's that. That's those two to go on the show table and all the rest to go in the display. And I'll obviously film the show itself. I'm going to try and do Zane's scavenger hunt while I'm at it. If I can bully one or two of the vendors to do a selfie, because that's one of the things I've got to try and do. I'll bribe them with thinking about buying a plant. Anyway, that's that then. Just some ideas about getting plants ready for a show. And yeah, good stuff. I'll probably see you again on Sunday when I put the show video together.